And if you feel otherwise, just let me know. Great. So let's see, any other housekeeping rules? My recommendation is if you are open on your laptop with multiple tabs, close all the other tabs, all your distraction. Feel free to raise your questions at any time. You don't have to wait till the Q&A section to do it. And yeah, I will be monitoring the chat, but excuse me if I am a bit slow to respond to some of the things that are being typed out. Great. So I like to kick off my workshops or my webinars with community announcements. This is a chance for anyone to share something interesting that they're working on. People sometimes will talk about jobs that they're looking for. Sometimes people might say, hey, I'm looking to hire someone. Or if you have an upcoming event that you think is interesting for the community, you're welcome to share that. So do come off mute and introduce yourself and just talk about what you want to share. Or you can type it in the chat box. So I'll give people a few seconds to do that. You can share anything. Everyone's too shy tonight. All right, if no one is going to share anything, I will move on. Oh, Swapnil is sharing. Software engineer by profession, works with healthcare partners on health research projects. Thanks for introducing yourself, Swapnil. Definitely feel free to just introduce yourself if you have nothing to share as well, if you just want to get people to know you. Nicole sharing. In the coming weeks, I'm putting on a series of 3 workshops that share tools to help you and your organization focus limited resource in times of, let me scroll back up, times of scarcity, generate cohesion within the team, and develop systems for evidence-based decision-making. Feel free to private message her for details and contact. It's a free workshop as well. Great, thank you, Nicole. Anyone else doing anything interesting during these times? Great, I'm going to move on then. So quickly, just to give some of you some of my background and tell you where I'm coming from so that you know my perspective and what biases I might hold when I'm sharing. My name is Chin. I come from a background in entrepreneurship. When I graduated in 2011 from UBC, one of the biggest things for me was I felt that the education system, Ms. Ha just shared. I'll quickly go through my introduction and then I'll read out all the other intros and community announcements from the group in the chat box. So yes, when I graduated from UBC in 2011, I actually came up with a BSc in psychology, and I found that the education system was really designed around the industrial era. It taught me a lot about what skills. It helped me figure out what I needed to get a job, but it didn't quite give me the guidance I needed to help me figure out what I personally wanted to do in my life. And at the time, I wanted to start a business, so I decided to go into sales. So sales was my background, started in corporate sales, and then eventually started my first company in 2011 doing mobile app development. Made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of things, and then went back into corporate again, and then ended up joining Spring, which is an incubator, social venture incubator in Vancouver. And I've recently left Spring after about 5 years with them. So in the process, I've been working very closely with a lot of entrepreneurs that have been starting ideas from the ground up, all the way to launching their business, growing, and raising funding as well. So I like to be able to bring some of my perspective and knowledge to the table with regards to how people have kind of decided what they want to do in life, both career-wise and also entrepreneur-wise. So that's kind of a bit of my background. Ms. Ha shared, hi, I'm from FIS Vietnam. So FIS is the Foreign Trade University Innovation and Incubation Space in Vietnam. They are also launching a series of webinar talks for startups. Christina Soka shared, Christina Soka, sorry, I apologize if I botch your name. Currently looking for social innovation remote work. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Great. And I do have the habit of speaking quickly, so I apologize if I'm going a bit too quickly. Feel free to remind me in the chat to slow down if I do. So key outcomes for today's session, I'm going to try to cover 4 main things. I want to help us all understand how we do decision-making based on rational decision-making versus value-based decision-making. We will go into detail about how we can try to define our personal core values. So I do hope that everyone walking out of today's session will have a clearer idea of what your personal values are. We will talk a bit about how to communicate and inspire people with your personal vision. And then we will try to map out a personal life plan to accomplish your vision. So I'll try my best, and no promises here that you will walk away with some sort of eureka moment and know exactly what your life is meant for. Sometimes it's more of a journey, it's more of a discovery. So I think the idea is to help expose you to different tools, different techniques to get your mind going so that you can start thinking about what you might be interested in doing. Great. So why values, why purpose? I think this is, as I was going through my career and as I was graduating, one of the things that I really struggled with was I started to go into personal development because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do in life. I didn't know what job I wanted to apply for. I didn't know what kind of company I wanted to start. I just knew that, hey, I wanted to, at the time, make a lot of money and be successful. But what was difficult was I couldn't quite define what success meant to me. So over the past few years, I've kind of learned to understand what I view and where my thoughts are coming from as success, and how I can get to that stage where I can share all of this with you as well. So as Mark Twain famously said, the 2 most important days in your life are the day that you are born and the day that you find out why. Because once you find out why you exist, then you will find that you have a lot more fulfillment in everything that you do. You will find that you are more proactive with going out and starting things, that everything you do in life has some sort of meaning. So that is something that I have found a great amount of fulfillment in the work that I do, because now I know what my values are, now I know what my purpose is, and I hope that you will hopefully be able to find this journey, find this within you in this journey as well. So quickly, if you think about it, most people, or at least half of the people that you speak to, they find that their life or their work typically lacks meaning. And you'll find that employees, so if you are a CEO, if you're a founder, and even if you're an employee, you'll find that you have much higher job satisfaction if you have meaning to your life, if you know what your purpose is, and you're a lot more engaged. Not only at work, but if you think about work, you're spending so much time at work, right? I'd say most of us spend probably even more time at work than we do with our families. And if that's the case, and we're spending so much time at work, you better be able to enjoy what you're doing. It better align, it should align with your values, and it should align with your core purpose. So if not, then of course, this is your chance to explore, your chance to find what really fits for you. If you are considering the idea of starting a business or starting a startup, you have to know that success is not overnight, right? Not only with a startup, but even in your career as well. It usually takes some amount of time. And if you're going to be spending a lot of time working in a business, then you better be able to do something that is meaningful for you. Because at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs go into business just for the money. But even if they are successful at the end of the road, they will still say, hey, I wish I had done it differently. I wish I had actually focused on something that was a bit more meaningful. So my takeaway from what I've heard from a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with is, if you can align with yourself with something that you really care about, you will find a lot more fulfillment in the work that you do, and you tend to get a lot more joy out of it. And what's interesting is, in the past 5 years, I've been working with social ventures. So if you're not familiar with the term, it's basically a for-profit business that is also impacting and making the world a better place in the process of doing it. And what's interesting is a lot of investors will typically have the impression that capitalistic entrepreneurs that focus just on the money, just on the profit, tend to be more profitable. But what you actually find is companies that have some alignment and are a bit more conscious with how they do business, they actually tend to outperform regular tech companies that are just, having those regular simple apps or games like that. So if you have some meaning to your business, your employees are more fulfilled, they're more engaged, they perform better, and the whole company does better as a whole. So the challenge now is it's very easy to understand that values are important. And I think like when you go out, you watch a lot of videos, you watch TED Talks, they will tell you that it's important to figure out what your why is, what your mission is, but they don't really tell you how to figure out what your why is or what your mission is. So I want to try to go through some exercises to help us define our values, our mission. So first off, I want to kind of introduce decision-making. What I learned growing up is when my parents raised me, the traditional mindset, and I think this applies to a lot of you as well, is that when you have a decision, the first thing that you do is you try to logically think it out. So you will write down a list, or you will consider in your mind a list of pros and a list of cons. And what happens unconsciously is we tend to try to weigh it out and see which are there more benefits than disadvantages to making this decision. So for example, you might say, okay, should I go to business school or should I study psychology, right? What are the pros and cons? Then you might think, okay, what are my odds of finding a job if I get this degree? Am I interested in this? Will my parents support it? Things like that. So you start to weigh different things out, and you tend to weigh it based on these mental pros and cons that you have. What a lot of us don't realize is that pros and cons are very subjective. My pros and cons will be different from your pros and cons. So I might say like, hey, let's say working for Microsoft, maybe that is a pro for me because Microsoft is a very reputable company. But for you, that might be a con because maybe in your case, you actually enjoy the freedom of being able to work on your own ideas and you want to start your own company, right? So pros and cons will be different from everyone. And actually what I've come to realize is it really stems from your core values. And I'll walk through an example so that you can better understand that. So let's say there are two choices that you have. Choice A or job A is to work at a startup, right? If you work at this startup in job A, there is a high potential of reward. This startup could possibly become the next unicorn. It's very exciting, but of course, it's also very risky because, as you know, startups are usually in that journey of validating the market as well. So they still have to figure out a lot of things. And with startups, I'm not sure if people are aware of it, but usually there's not much of a work-life balance in most startups. Startups tend to subscribe to what we call the hustle culture, which I don't think is a very healthy way of doing it. But a lot of venture scale startups will focus highly on growth, and that tends to put a lot of pressure on their employees as well. And of course, lastly is there is a high potential of growth within a startup as well, because maybe you can actually get promoted quickly as the company grows very quickly. Job B, on the other hand, corporate job, secure income, very regular work schedule, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and it's a nice and stable role. So if you see these two choices, I'm curious if some people want to type in the chat, who would prefer job A and who would prefer job B? I'm just going to read out Hong's response to Christine. Hong from Foreign Trade University Innovation and Incubation Space. They're running a series of social innovation program, which provides youth with lots of social innovation knowledge and incubate social innovation projects. And looks like both Hong and Ms. Ha are interested in connecting with you, Christina. So Cynthia said job A, Chloe job B, Maria job A, Evelyn job B, Irma job A, Pamela job A, Andrej 50-50, Joy C, I'm not sure what job C is. Fan said B, Isabel said A, Caleb A, job C. Yeah, so you can see there's no right or wrong answer, and everyone has a different choice. So let me give you an example now. So let's say if you know that this person, and his name is John, we'll just give him a name. If his personal values is family first, health is second, and he also cares about security and growth, you can quite readily imagine that John will probably prefer to go for the job B, for the corporate job, because he will be able to spend more time with his family. He has weekends off. He only works 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That also allows him to spend more time on his personal fitness and health. He can go to the gym. It's stable, right? Security, growth. Maybe growth might not be the same, but it's a different type of growth, right? In a corporate job, usually there is more mentorship. If you work for a startup, there's usually less mentorship, but you actually learn a lot of things because you're forced to pretty much pick things up on the fly. So you can imagine that John will probably prefer job B. So that's why I think it's really important for us as individuals to notice our values first, because once we notice our values, it becomes a lot easier for us to make decisions and realize why we're making those decisions. What are the pros and cons? What informs those pros and cons? So I want to do an exercise to help you try to define your values. So this exercise actually comes from Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. And what you do in this exercise is you actually start by listing out 10 things that appeal to you. So what happens here is these are just some example words, some example values. If you have other things that are not on here that you think apply to you that really resonate with you, feel free to list that out. So I want to give you a few minutes. We probably won't take up to 15 minutes. We'll probably only take about 5 minutes with this. But I want you to take some time, and I'm going to put myself on mute. We'll have some quiet time. Just reflect on what are 10 things that apply to you, 10 values that you care about. Because I know if I ask you right now, what is the one most important thing for you, it's really difficult for you to do that. So what are 10 things that you care about? And you don't have to type it out in the chat. Just take some time, reflect on this. All right, I'll give everyone 2 more minutes. But if you already have your list of 10 values, what I want you to do to start is to actually look at some of those items and challenge if some of those values are actually core values or if they are manifestations of something else. So what I mean by that is, for example, money is not a core value. Money can mean different things to different people, right? Money could mean a sense of security for one person. It could mean a sense of freedom for someone else. So if you have a value, is that a core value or is there something else that might underlie that? All right. I will get you all to come back here. Great. So the reason why I do it this way is because in Tony Robbins' book, and I found it to be quite effective for myself as well, is that he talks about how it's very difficult for people to condense their top three or even top five values right off the bat. So it's easier for people to just start by actually listing things that they care about and actually come up with a longer list and then eventually try to grade that list. So the next step then is, now that you have those 10 values, you want to try to rank all of them from a scale of 1 to 10. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Not actually rank each of them from a scale of 1 to 10, but rank them all in terms of which is the number one value all the way to the number 10 value that you care about. So if you're struggling with figuring out what is a more important value, start to compare two values together instead of looking at the whole list. So for example, if you might have, let's say, security and let's say growth on your value list, then think, is security or growth more important for you? And slowly, as you start to compare each of these values to each other, you get a list of 1 to 10. So I will give you all maybe 2 minutes to do this. All right, 1 more minute. All right, great. So maybe first off, I'll share some of my personal values. So what I've personally learned from it so that you can kind of see how I've applied it in my life. And then if some of you have been able to start to see how some of your personal values have informed your decision, I'd love to have you share your experiences in the chat as well. So myself, my top three values are growth. Number one is growth, contribution, and the third one is passion. So values, do know that values can evolve over time. But why I like to start with values is I find that values tend to be relatively static as compared to the journey of finding your personal mission. I find that finding your personal mission is more a process of evolution. You actually go through a few different things. Your mission might change over time as you figure out what you enjoy doing, what you don't enjoy doing, what you're passionate about, what you dislike, things like that. But values, usually at this stage in life, most of us are usually already graduated. We are typically in a stage where we've already started working. We have values that have been instilled in us in our upbringing, or we start to build our own sense of values. So what I've noticed with my top three values, growth, contribution, and passion, they have changed over time. It started as growth, contribution, and the third one was something else. I don't quite remember, but I've done this exercise a few times over the last 5 years, and passion is the new third value. But what I notice is everything that I do coming out of even while I was in university, I noticed that I really enjoy the process of just learning new things. And I noticed that every time I don't know if you see this in you, if growth is one of the values, but every time I start a new job, I'll get really excited because I'm learning new stuff. And then once I get to a stage where I stop learning new things and it feels like I'm just, doing the same thing over and over again, I get really bored and sick and tired of the job. So what I notice is values, that growth value is a core part of myself. I like to learn, grow. And then contribution is something that is very important for me as well. I always like to be able to, in some form, give back. coach other people, train other people, work with other people. So I think one of the funniest examples of this was when I was in university in my first year. There was actually a rumor of this rogue uh, physics professor that was going around and actually giving students the answers to all the physics problems. And that was because I was actually on the physics forum, actually having people actually post their questions and solving their problems for them, because I enjoyed the process of doing it and explaining, because I found that it helped me understand the concepts as well. So contribution is a big thing. And what I noticed is, in my most recent job with Spring, that really appealed to my top two core values. I was growing all the time. I was learning from mentors. I was learning from the entrepreneurs as well as they go through different problems. And I was also contributing very meaningfully because I was actually working with social ventures. They were actually making the world a better place. So it felt very rewarding for me. So I really enjoyed the work that I did at Spring. And you can see I was with Spring for about 5 years. And why I left Spring, that's actually a different story. But long story short is basically they've moved away from doing incubation on an entrepreneurial level. They've moved more towards consulting on the ecosystem level. And I really enjoy working with individuals on a one-on-one basis. So I came to see that my values really align with that. And at the time that I was I was with Spring, I really realized that, you know what, because my values align so well with the company, I actually don't have to go out and start my own business. I can actually contribute in a way that I enjoy contributing through another organization because they align on the values that I have and they have the same mission that I do. And of course, their mission has adjusted, so that has caused us to part ways. But that's kind of my main takeaway there. Make sense? So if you have other insights, like how your values have informed your decisions, I'd love to hear you say that. Anyone have anything to share? Great. If not, we will move on to the next exercise. And again, you can still feel free to share down growth, contribution, and gratitude from Christine. Yes, definitely amazing. Gratitude is a big part as well. It's on my list of 10, just not top 3. Great. So yes, if you have seen examples of how those values have applied to your decision making, I'd love to have you share, a story of that as well. So reflection. So I want to go through another exercise. This one is a bit more ambiguous as an exercise, but I want you to start thinking about what are things that you are passionate about. What do you really love to do? What do you enjoy? Were there certain moments in your work, in your personal life that you found great fulfillment in? Sometimes you see this in interview questions as well. I remember I was actually looking at the interview process for Thinkific, and one of the questions they had is, tell me about an instance where you felt really fulfilled in the work that you do. So companies like to try to weed this out because they want to try to identify your values as well. So if you're thinking about how to answer some of those questions, this is a good chance to come up with some possible responses as well. So yes, think about other things. Think about what do you believe? What do you believe about the people that you work with, about the people that you serve, about the people that you're helping? What do you believe about the problem? And why is it important to solve it if you're an entrepreneur? So Chloe said, my core values are love, connection, and happiness. In all my positions, I derive a lot of satisfaction from establishing meaningful relationships. Great. So I'm going to go on mute again. I'll just give you all about 2 minutes to just reflect a bit on some of these questions here. All right, so I think we're gonna move on. But do know that some of these things require quite a bit of quiet time and reflection. So if you don't have enough time, or if you're maybe a bit distracted in this webinar, then I encourage you to take some time after the session as well to spend some of your own personal time to reflect on some of these things. And I will, at the end, if I forget, do remind me to talk quickly about how I meditate, to think about some of these things as well. So I have a few different meditation techniques that I can share with you all. But now that we have kind of covered values and reflected a bit on our passions, what we care about, there is this concept I want to quickly introduce. It's called Ikigai. So Ikigai, some of you might have heard of it. It comes from the Japanese concept of aligning all things that you are good at, that you love, things that the world needs and what you can be paid for. And all of that, if it aligns, then you should be in that perfect place called your vocation. Sort of the reason for being the things that you really care about. Sorry, not vocation. Vocation is part of it. So if you look at the diagram here, what you love and what you're good at is your passion. What you love and what the world needs is sort of your mission. And then what you can be paid for and what the world needs is your vocation. What you're good at and what you can be paid for, that's your profession. So ideally, if you can align all of it together, that's where you have that perfect place where you take full fulfillment in the work that you do, you really enjoy it, and you're good at it as well. So I'm going to try to walk you through the different sections and try to hopefully arrive at a place where we all have better clarity on what our Ikigai is. So the next thing is, let's reflect a bit more on our strengths. So when we talk about strengths, there's this quote that Albert Einstein says, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid, right? So you want to be able to play to your strengths. So there is this exercise that you can run. And I think as you think about this exercise, it's a great exercise to do as an individual, but it's also a good exercise to do with your team. So if you work in a company, or if you run a company or a startup, then I encourage you to try this out, because I think it's a very interesting way to see how people align. So how this exercise works is basically, it's called Unique Genius. There are 4 columns. So yours to do is the first column. So these are things that you have superior skill in, that you are really, really good. It gives you absolute energy to be doing these activities. Without prompting, without people actually pushing you to do it, you naturally go out and seek to develop yourself in this area, right? You can contribute in this to this thing in a variety of different ways. You naturally do these things. It's very satisfying for you to do these things. The second column is what they call you've mastered. And what is interesting is a lot of us might have actually built our careers around things that we have mastered. So these are things that we are really, really good at. So your reputation might even be linked to what you have mastered. But although you are very competent at it, it is not something that truly drives you. Maybe you somewhat enjoy it, but at the same time, it is not sort of like your first language, right? So an example is one of the skills that I'm very good at, that I would say I've mastered, is sales. But I don't really enjoy selling. But it is something I can do pretty well if I actually need to do it. And that's kind of my background, my professional background. So you want to know what's yours to do, what you've mastered, and then you can do activities where you could just do it. You know, maybe if your boss asks you to do it, you can do it, but it's not the very, very best. Yes, I can definitely share the slides. So Christina was asking. And some of the things that you can do, you might sometimes feel that it's a bit tedious, or you might get anxious if you are asked to do them. And sometimes when you're doing it, you just wish you were doing something else. And then of course, things that you're not meant to do is your performance is subpar. You actually lose energy doing it. You actually feel like you're terrible at it, right? And why I like this exercise is because it allows you to think about your strengths and your weaknesses without using the term weaknesses. People are a lot more comfortable sharing what's theirs to do, what they're mastered, what they can do, and what they're not meant to do, rather than just looking at things in black and white, whether it's a strength or a weakness. So I want you to take some time, reflect on this. And when you reflect and you try to map out your unique genius, I want you to think in terms of 2 levels. So one level is your professional level. So are there specific skills? So maybe it's like sales, marketing, it might be graphic designing, things like that. The second one is personal skills. So like maybe it's public speaking. Maybe it's even things like photography. So I want you to map out what is yours to do, what are things that you've mastered, what you can do, and what is stuff that you're not meant to do. So I'll give everyone maybe about 3 minutes to do this. So a question from Swapnil: what if you're good at something because you have done it for a long time? So it could be something that is either you've mastered or yours to do. So it really depends. Like, you know, if you're good at something because you've done it for a long time, like I mentioned, your reputation could be tied to things that you've mastered, and you could be actually really, really good at it. But despite being good at it, it might not be something that you really, really, truly enjoy. So if that's the case, then it's something that you've mastered. If you really enjoy it, and if you naturally find that without prompt, without someone pushing you, you will naturally try to read books about this topic, or you try to actually learn more things about this topic, then maybe that's something that's yours to do. All right, I think I'm going to move on. But quickly, I'll give a context of using this in a team activity if some of you are working in teams. When I was working at Spring, we did this with our team, and what was interesting that came out of it was I noticed that myself, for example, me and Keith, uh, Keith was also sales fell under his master, but it's not something that is his to do. He really enjoys problem solving, you know, working with people. For myself, you know, sales, same thing there. And then some of the things that were not meant to do for me is I don't like looking at data. I don't like reading reports, writing reports. And what was interesting is Sana, who was one of our new team members at the time, she actually really enjoyed the process of writing reports. So like writing reports, looking at data, analytics, that was her yours to do. And you could see that my not meant to do was I don't like to do reports. So it actually meant that we were really good teammates because she could fill in my gaps. And what we saw is that in our team, none of us actually enjoyed doing sales. So the first hiring decision that came out of that was, hey, maybe we need to hire someone who really actually enjoys doing sales. So other ways that you can start to think about what you're good at is to look at what you're currently good at and what you're not good at. What do you enjoy? What don't you enjoy? So that's just another way of framing it. So I'm not going to actually go through this exercise, but it's the same way of rephrasing that exercise that we just went through. So if we've done some of that, and hopefully we should have gotten to a place where we're a bit clearer on, but now we know, what we are good at. And the previous exercise on the values helps us really understand what we love. The next thing is talking about what can we be paid for. So before we go into that, let's talk a bit about vision. So vision, I think, like I mentioned, not all of us will have absolute clarity on vision, but I think it helps to try to define vision so that whatever you do, you try to align yourself with that vision. And I'll give you a personal example here. So in work, there are certain things that I personally don't enjoy doing. Like I hate organizing events, to be honest. I hate the act of like marketing, planning events, and some parts of actually like running these webinar is actually really boring for me. Like you don't see what goes on the back end, but like when I have to copy paste the event description, post it on Meetup, and then post it on all the different calendars, it can get pretty dry. Like I'm just writing copy and copy pasting it on many different places to promote the event. So that's something that I don't actually enjoy. But what is interesting is I've noticed that because I know that all my activities actually align with my vision, with my mission, I find that I actually, things that I didn't enjoy, so like when I was doing event planning at Spring, like sometimes some of the events I get really tired doing it. But when I'm doing it for my own venture, I actually get excited doing it, even though it is kind of dry in a sense. Because I feel like, hey, every time I'm doing this, I'm getting more people, I'm able to reach more people and actually deliver more value, and I get a lot of satisfaction from that. So even the simplest things that you don't take joy out of, if you find that it aligns with your vision, then you will actually find more fulfillment doing the work that you do. You'll learn to love what you're doing. Make sense? So the famous quote that I love is in Alice in the Wonderland, there is the story of the cat and Alice. And Alice will actually ask the cat, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the cat will actually say, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to, says the cat. And Alice says, I don't much care where. She doesn't know where she wants to go. Then the cat says, it doesn't matter which way you go. So if you don't quite get the quote, if you don't know where you're going, you will get somewhere eventually just by walking. But if you know where you're going, then people can point you in the right direction. People can give you the right resources, can help you in the right way, and you can actually align your activities to be a lot more meaningful. Make sense? So what's your why? If some of you have not, so I'll quickly introduce this concept. There's this great video. I encourage all of you to view it, and I will share it in the post-event email as well. It's by Simon Sinek, and his book is actually Start with the Why. And the video's title is actually, it's a TED Talk, and the title is How Great Leaders Inspire People. So in his talk, he talks about how Apple is so innovative and how Steve Jobs was able to rally people around his vision. So if you look at Apple, Apple, in essence, is really not much more different from any other computer company. They have access to the same talent, to the same amount of people. They have almost the same products. They have MP3 players, they have a laptop, they have a cell phone. They have access to all the same resources as well. So they work with the same consultants, agencies, media channels, things like that. But what makes them so different? What makes them so innovative? And the answer to that in his talk is, when you look at how Apple communicates and you look at how they brand themselves, everything really comes from the core, and the core is the why. So he talks about this golden circle. And in the golden circle, what he alludes to is organizations that communicate from the inside out, from the why to the how and the what, are the ones that really inspire people to follow their vision and actually execute and deliver on it. A lot of organizations actually do it the other way around. They're actually very clear on what they're doing. So if you approach a company, and I typically find this a lot with, let's say, marketing agencies. So if you speak to most marketing agencies, not all of them, but if you speak to most of them and you say, hey, tell me about what you do, they will say, hey, we provide graphic design, we do website design, we do SEO, right? And at the end of the day, like, some of them might even be able to articulate how they're different from other marketing agencies, so they know what's different with them. But if you really ask them, like, why are you doing what you're doing, they don't have a clear answer to that. And of course, it's important to know what you're doing, but that doesn't inspire people to really want to take action. Because in his talk, Simon talks about how a lot of us, when we make decisions to do something, not only buy something, we tend to make decisions that feel right. And this is because in our brain, we have our prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of decision making, and then we have our brainstem, which is evolving from our reptilian brain, right? And from there, that's where all of these gut feelings come from. Emotion, the sense of like what feels right or not. So often you always hear people say, you know what, I don't want to hire that guy because I just don't feel right with him, or I don't want to make that decision because my gut feeling tells me otherwise. So all of this gut feeling really comes from knowing what our why is. So his example is, he talks like, if Apple communicated and just said, hey, what we do is we sell computers, we're different because we actually make them beautiful, they're user-friendly, do you want to buy one? It doesn't sound as inspiring. And if you flip it over and you actually say, hey, what we do is we are trying to challenge the status quo. We want to help people who want to do things differently. And how we do that is by creating beautifully designed, user-friendly interfaces, computers, and all these devices. And we actually create laptops and all of these. Do you want to buy one? So you can see from this change in messaging, this change in branding, it sounds a lot more compelling. So if you know your why, it helps you kind of communicate and inspire people to follow your vision a lot more clearer. Make sense? So I think the why not only is that important for helping us rally people around us, but it also really helps us align our activities that I mentioned. So the biggest thing that I always get from a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think it applies to professionals as well, is when do I give up? So in an entrepreneurial context, a lot of entrepreneurs tend to ask me, how do I know if my idea is actually a bad idea, if I'm actually just being too stubborn, or how do I know if I'm actually just not trying hard enough, and maybe it's just that, that next bit of wall that I have to break through before I find that gold mine, right? So the answer there is, I find the decision to, in business terms, is called a pivot, to actually pivot your business to do something different from your business. If you align it on your why, then technically you are still going towards the same end goal. You're still heading to the same direction. You're just taking a detour. Maybe it's not a straight line, you're going somewhere else, but you still end up at the same endpoint. So if you know your why, you are not, as they call it, you're not throwing shit on the wall and seeing what sticks, right? You're actually doing something, you have a core mission, and you actually end up persevering through all the difficult challenges because you're finding different ways to fulfill that mission. So what I found interesting is, like I mentioned with social ventures, social entrepreneurs, they actually care a lot about their mission. They're actually going into business not just to make money, but because they actually want to make the world a better place. And I find that they actually are a bit more successful than regular entrepreneurs that start a company just because they want to make a lot of money. Because what happens is, the entrepreneurs that are what I call opportunist entrepreneurs, they start a company because they want to be their own boss, so make a lot of money. They tend to give up actually pretty quickly because they find out that, oh, you know what, starting a business is not as easy as I thought it's going to be, or oh, look, there's a competitor. I didn't expect to actually have to run into this challenge for addressing this competitor, and I can't figure out how to get customers. Then they tend to give up more quickly. But the social entrepreneurs, because they care about the mission, let's say it's reducing environment pollution or dealing with mental health, they tend to actually not give up as quickly. And what I find is, it's not about not giving up and being stubborn. You don't have to be married and tied to the manifestation of your idea, but you are married to the vision, so you are flexible with the manifestation. So you're open to adjusting how you try to realize that vision. Make sense? So same if you're a professional. If you're not an entrepreneur, if you're thinking like, hey, why am I stuck in this dead-end job, this career that I'm doing? Like, if it's actually aligning with your mission and values, you will find fulfillment and you will actually figure out how you can get to where you want to go in your career. But if you really don't know where you're going, then it's really hard for me to tell you, like, should you continue? Should you stop? Like, are you on the right path or not? Because you don't really know what your end goal is. Make sense? Great. So when you think about your vision as well, once you have clarity on your vision, the next thing to really realize is you have to be patient with your vision. And when I say patience here is, there is a disconnect between what the current manifestation of your vision is versus your end goal. And in a company context, and I tend to use companies a lot because I think it's a bit easier to associate yourself with companies. You can see over here, Samsung started as a grocery store. It actually did not start as a cell phone company. Toyota, the car company, actually started with textile equipment. And Nokia was actually a pulp mill. Nintendo was playing cards. Zoho CRM was actually a network management tool. So a lot of things, even if they start out different, that's okay, as long as they know what their end vision is and they work towards that. So I encourage you, if you feel like you're doing something that you don't enjoy, just think about, like, is it really aligned with your vision? And if it is, then you will have that grit, that perseverance to actually work through some of these moments where you feel like, hey, I am not sure if I'm really doing what I need to do. The last thing that I want to cover is mapping out how we can really design our lives around our vision and mission. So there's this concept in design thinking called the double diamond. And design thinking is a design process that they use for designing solutions to anything. So it could be product design, it could be solutions for services, it could be just solving like a ecosystem or economic problem. And the idea is it can actually be applied to your career as well. So what you do in design thinking in this double diamond framework is there are two sides of the diamond. So on the right side, it is about designing it correctly. And then on the left side, it's about designing the right thing. So I'll quickly say it again just to make sure you get it. So on the left side, it's designing the right thing. And then the right side, it's designing it right. So for example, if you say, okay, one of the problems is I want to be able to help people learn during this COVID situation where schools are closed. So that's a problem. And then designing the right thing could be, okay, I think I'm going to create an e-learning app. Or maybe I'm going to create an online webinar series like what I'm doing, right? So that's the left side, designing the right thing. Is it an app? Is it a workshop? Is it a series? Is it maybe an online course on Thinkific? So there are many different ways of manifesting what the solution is. And then designing right is, okay, now I know it's an app, then I need to make sure that it's user-friendly, that it's actually intuitive in terms of the user interface, things like that. So that's kind of what you're trying to do. So what you go through is in your personal journey, even in your career as well, what you're trying to do at the start is you're on the left side. So you're starting to try to figure out, like, what do I want to do in life? So that's the research phase. So in the research phase, you're trying to figure out different career options. You're trying to come up with different ideas in terms of how I can, let's say if you want to start a business, how I can solve some of the problems. So there are two types of research. You have primary research, you have secondary research. Primary research will be more like going online, doing research, searching up companies that are doing something similar, looking at people who are in similar careers to figure out if they enjoy their careers or not, things like that. Secondary research might be more in-person interviewing, actually going out, speaking to people, actually asking them like, hey, why did you do what you do? Like, tell me about how you ended up where you are today. How are you successful? Things like that. And then in defining, what you are doing is, after all that research, you have many, many different options now. So you say, okay, maybe I could go into, I could become a historian teacher, or maybe I could become an English teacher, or maybe I could go work for the education department for the government, right? So that's where you try to come up with all those ideas, and you try to figure out what is the best idea to go after. What is the best career path, or what's the best solution for solving a problem that you're building. And then once you land in the middle, what you do now is, now you know what your career path is, for example, you come up with different ideas on how you can get into that career stream. Or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're saying, okay, how do I solve this specific problem? If I know that, okay, the problem I want to solve is I want to help bring education to people virtually, then what are the different ideas I can come up with to do virtual programming? So you're coming up with different ideas. Maybe it's, this is how the program runs, this is the format, maybe it's another format, maybe it's something else. So that's the ideation phase. And then the last quadrant is your implementing and testing. So that's where you go out and actually test and put your solution in front of people and see if they actually find it appealing, or if not, maybe you try to come up or test a different solution, different idea. So in your career journey, then that's the case where, you know, you actually try different careers, you try different things. Maybe you apply for one company, you realize that, hey, you know what? This role that I think maybe I wanted to be senior developer for iOS, maybe I'm actually not as excited about that. Maybe I actually enjoy Android a bit more. Then that's where you try and test and implement different things to figure out or get closer to what you're really passionate about. So I hope you can try to apply this framework. I don't really have the time to go through more detailed examples. I can try to do that if you have more questions, but I just wanted to kind of introduce that so that you can start to think about how you can map it out. So quickly, a question here. I'm going to look at the chat. So Yunji was asking, Yunji was suggesting, can I also suggest it helps to break down your skills further? For example, sales can be undermastered, but listening skills that's needed for sales could be your to-do skill. Yes, for sure. So that's why I mentioned not only professional skills, but also personal skills as well. So just as I think about that, one example for myself is sales is one of the things that I've mastered, but I don't really enjoy sales. But on the other hand, what's to do for me is I actually really enjoy speaking and coaching and problem solving. But problem solving, of course, is also part of sales as well. So it does make me good at what I do for sales, but it's not what I'm personally excited about the act of actually selling people. Make sense? Fizz was asking, what is the difference between Double Diamond and Lean or design thinking? Uh, Double, Double Diamond is a framework that is within design thinking. So design thinking is really the methodology around empathy, around understanding your users. So the main focus around design thinking is you're not holding yourself out. So the traditional design process is what we call the waterfall methodology. So you have people who sit down, they do a lot of planning, they come up with a prototype, a design, they build, and then after that they launch. And then from launching it, what happens is people actually test, they get feedback at the end. But what happens in the traditional process is a lot of resources go into developing this product, and you only get feedback at the tail end when you finally launch your product. So Lean as a framework, the framework behind Lean is about building quickly and iterating quickly. So you build, measure, learn. So that's the main framework around Lean. So you build small things to test different assumptions. So you're measuring it and then you're learning different things. And Double Diamond is a framework for designing that also applies to Lean as well. So they're different things, but they're very much related. I'm not sure if that fully explains it, but yeah, book Design Your Life. Yes, that's actually a book that someone else has recommended as well. And I think they talk a bit about some of this process around how you can use design thinking to map out your life. So if you've gone through all of that, what we've covered today is basically we've talked a bit about what you've learned, what you love, what you're good at. And then as you go through that design thinking journey of testing, experimenting, and seeing what people want, what they need, you're also trying to define what the world needs and what you can be paid for as well. And if you have all of that, you should be able to align yourself with a career or start a business that you are truly passionate about. So last thing that I quickly want to talk about, especially since a lot of us now are work from home people, I guess, and some people are possibly even laid off with the COVID situation. No, I am wearing pants. I'm not like that. But basically, the idea is if you're in a situation where you have been put out of a job right now, especially because of the economic situation, then I do encourage you to explore entrepreneurship. And the reason why I talk about entrepreneurship is my view of entrepreneurship is a bit different from traditional entrepreneurship. I don't quite believe that every company needs to be a tech company that is a venture scale company. You can also start and be, let's say, a consultant or freelancer, or maybe someone who is in the gig economy as well. But as long as you're doing something that really aligns or adds value to your end goal. So the idea is if you can't find a job, and if you're really struggling to find a job now because a lot of companies are not hiring, why not just create a job for yourself? So that's all I will really say on this piece. So I'd love to hear if other people have found different things that work for you. Chloe wanted to take a quick look at this. Yeah. Chloe, did you have a question on this? What is a rate triangle? So yeah, the rate triangle is basically just what I just talked about in terms of the design thinking process. So we've just covered on kind of how to try to identify what the world needs, what problems need to be solved, how to come up with the solution. And from there, kind of assess if it's something that customers are willing to be paid for, to pay for. So I hope that clarifies your question. If not, happy to answer that offline as well or through chat. the other idea is with employer entrepreneur. So I talked about like you can start something if you can't find something of your own, but the reverse is also quite true. So a lot of people think that they need to start something of their own, but the idea is if you can find a company that realigns with your values, you don't always have to start something brand new. Christina's asking, who's the author for Design Your Life? So Chloe, yes. I'm suggesting ideally you should aim to be in the middle. You should aim to try to align everything together. Things that you love, things that you're good at, things that you can be paid for, and what the world needs. The rate triangle is mostly just this framework here helps you define that rate triangle. Design thinking. Because what you're doing here is you're doing research. You're trying to figure out what problems people have. You're trying to figure out which problem you want to solve for. You're trying to come up with ideas for solving the problem. And then you are testing your different ideas to see what problem actually works. So if I talk about what the world needs, so that's deciding what problem you want to solve. That's the converging and synthesis piece. Ideation and implementation, that's kind of what you can be paid for, right? You're testing different ideas. You're seeing what people will be willing to use, what people will be willing to pay for. Great. So yeah, if you can find a company that aligns with your values, then you don't have to start something brand new. You can definitely join the company, join forces. It makes a lot more sense to actually work together with other people rather than try to do everything from scratch. So I'll just quickly cover a few other things and then we can probably wrap up as well. So bonus resources, definitely recommend this book if you haven't read it. Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. I found it personally very helpful for myself. I'm not a big fan of how Tony talks in some of his talks myself, too much energy for me, but his books actually have a lot of good content. So yes, that is the Ikigai. I'll quickly pull up some of my notes on my phone. So some key summaries: make decision based on your values, not just based on pros and cons. Play to your strengths and weaknesses, and define and know where you want to go. Once you know where you want to go, you can try to use the double diamond methodology to map out how you can get there or what are different ways to get there. So remember, like I mentioned, it's a journey. Often it won't take us we won't immediately be able to realize what exactly we want to do, what our end goal is. So it will take a while of experimentation, exploration to figure out what our vision is, what our purpose is. And what I find personally as well is sometimes it's a bit about convincing ourselves on what we really want to do. So when I really started some of this, I didn't quite know what exactly I wanted to do. And I was always passionate about education. But the longer I worked in the space of trying to add value and trying to deliver education, the more I convinced myself that education is really my true calling. So part of it is also about convincing yourself whether or not that's the mission that you care about. And yes, be flexible. Your values, your purpose can evolve over time. And yeah, be patient. Like your current manifestation might not be exactly what you think it's going to be. But as long as you know what your vision is, it helps you align your manifestation and helps you create a path to getting to your vision. So quickly, maybe I'll let Yunjia say a few words about her program that she has starting soon. And then I'll wrap up with some other items as well.
Cool. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Yep, I hear you.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chin. Hi, everyone. My name is Yun Jae. So just a brief introduction about myself. I worked in the technology and startup sector in New Zealand, actually, for the past 9 years. And I recently relocated to Vancouver here. I love shaping ideas into something tangible, so I created this platform called the Idea Shaper, where I can work with a wider audience to build their ideas into something more tangible. And I'll be offering a few programs on this, but today I'd like to talk to you about this first program called the Groundwork Program, and it's related to what Chin talked about today. So it's a 5-week online program, and it's to guide you to discover and articulate your strengths, personal values, personal mission statement. So you'll come out of the 5-week program with confidence and clarity on where you want to take the next steps So it's designed for people who are at a career turning point, or they're looking to reignite your personal life or work life passion, or for people who actually want to explore the entrepreneurship path and want to be in the right mindset, like Chin said. So I'll share the program overview here for people to see. One second. Yeah, I just shared the overview picture online in the chat. Have a look at that. Yeah, so you can see that each week we'll work on different topics, and everything will be run online. So anywhere in the world, you can actually join in from anywhere in the world. It'll be on Slack and emails. So how it's going to be run is every Monday you receive a new mission via Slack, and then you'll individually work on your mission during the week in your own time, and then come back by the end of the week and share the results on Slack with the group to discuss what your findings were, anything interesting, anything surprising. So each mission should take about an hour or something around that, and I'll provide you with some guidance as well. So I'm running a pilot starting this coming Monday, so next Monday, 6th of April, for 5 weeks, and I'd like to offer it for free to people who are serious about committing time to actually work on their next steps and who can give me some detailed feedback about the program afterwards. The space is limited, actually, so if you want to participate, email me at the hello@theideashaper.com. I'll type it here. Yeah. So email me, or if you just want to have a chat about what else will become available later on, I'm happy to have a chat as well. Just open to conversations around this topic. Yeah, happy to keep you updated. The program name is the Groundwork Program. Cool.
Great, thank you for sharing, Yunjae. So yeah, quickly just want to reiterate some of those things. So it is a free program. It is 5 weeks long. So I do ask that if any of you want to participate in Yunjae's program, that you actually take the time to give her the feedback so that she can improve the program, because that's what she's doing with the pilot program. So actually take the time, give her meaningful feedback so she can actually make good improvements to make it a better program. Awesome. And just to wrap up, some other quick things. As some of you might have already seen, or if you're not already aware, I'm running a series of continuous online workshops. The next one coming up is actually next week, April 8th, on ideation and innovation. There's some overlap with some of the things that we talked about today, but it's more centered around ideation for entrepreneurs. So if you're looking to start a business, if you're trying to come up with ideas, then that's actually a good one to talk about. We will be talking on April 15th with a panel on entrepreneurship as a career option. So people who are thinking, hey, you know what, maybe I can get a job, or maybe I want to think about going into a startup or starting my own startup, then we will actually have a few different entrepreneurs to share their experience of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I'm trying to bring as diverse a panel together as possible. Some of it will actually be horror stories, not all of it will be positive. So do be prepared to hear like what it really sounds like or what it really looks like to go through the journey of being an entrepreneur. April 22nd, how to persuade and influence people with words. Time management and productivity on May 6th. Startup basics, common mistakes to avoid. How to validate your idea on May 13th. How to write emails that people respond to on May 20th. And there's actually a lot more all the way up to June. So you can follow the link, which I will copy and paste in the chat as well on Eventbrite. If you want to view the full series of workshops, let me just put that in the chat. There's a chat box. Find the chat box. There we go. Yes, I will share my slides and I will email it to everyone as well. So yes, that's the link to the, oops, I posted it privately. There we go. That's the link to all the events. And I quickly asked, what I try to do with some of these workshops is I make all of the workshops free. So I don't actually like to sell like I mentioned before. I actually feel uncomfortable selling, and I really don't like it when people run workshops where they try to sell a program at the end of the workshop. I feel like you're going through a small lecture and then you're waiting for a sales pitch at the end. So I'd like to try to avoid that. But I want to be able to make sure that these webinars, these workshops can continue, can be sustainable, because I do also have a family to support. So if you found that this was of value of you, I appreciate if you are open to tipping. So if you want to tip, you can send an e-transfer to me at my email, chin@classynovel.com. But again, no pressure. So if you are in a position where you are not financially sustainable yourself, then don't worry about this. But the idea is the tipping helps make these webinars, this series, actually more accessible to people who are less fortunate. It allows me to spend more time doing content creation, creating resources and tools, and it helps expand the network as well. Because the more people we have that can share the knowledge, the more we all have to gain as well. And we will eventually move the series to in-person. It is all virtual right now because of COVID. But once that is all done with, then we will go back to in-person, and some of that funds will go towards helping me secure venues, getting food and beverage, and maybe even paying some of the guest speakers that we bring in as well. So that's all I'll say on that. Feedback. Oh, sorry, I need to copy this as well. Welcome any feedback. So if you have other ideas, different tools, if some of the things that I said made you feel uncomfortable, please give me some feedback so I can improve it for future sessions. Let me post that feedback link in the chat. There we go. So you are definitely, feel free to fill out that feedback form and give me any suggestions if you have any. Otherwise, questions and answers, if you want the slides, that's my email to reach out to. And that is it for the session. So any questions, you can type in the chat box, or you can go off mute. All right, thank you, everyone. And you are free to tune up whenever you want to tune up. I will hang around for a bit just in case anyone else has any questions. And that you all enjoyed it. Do you think you need years of experience before you jump in and start up a business as an entrepreneur? Great question, Eddie. Personally, I wish I actually went into, sorry if my clearing my throat is actually a bit loud on my microphone. But personally, I felt like I wish I had gone into entrepreneurship sooner rather than later. But what I would say is that you don't need experience to go into entrepreneurship, but you need to be humble enough to ask for help. So surround yourselves with mentors, try to find people who can give you good advice. Don't be afraid to join programs that you actually feel can give you actually good insight and help you avoid some of those rookie mistakes. So I'm a big fan of incubation programs, not only because I've actually been working in an incubator, but I think it actually helps you avoid a lot of the common mistakes. Your second question, do you think sales skills are required? I think every entrepreneur at some point needs to learn a bit of sales. You don't need to master it necessarily, but you will need to do sales at some point. And sales is a very broad topic because you're selling your product or service to your customers, but you're also selling your idea to possibly investors if you are trying to raise money, or if you're trying to recruit team members or co-founders, you're also trying to sell your vision to co-founders as well. So sales is, I've found sales to be one of the most useful skills in entrepreneurship. But yes, avoiding rookie mistakes. Like I've made a lot of mistakes myself. Like my first company, I ended up spending 6 months. I hired a development team of about 9 different developers. So we burned through about 60 grand in 6 months. And we had a product at the end. It was a mobile app that would help you rank dishes in restaurants so that you know what's the best dish to go to order when you get to a restaurant. But what we couldn't figure out is we couldn't figure out how to actually monetize. We couldn't actually get restaurant owners to pay us anything for the app. It was for the general consumer. They weren't willing to pay anything for it as well. And then what was interesting is when I actually went through the programs at Spring, so I've actually participated in Spring's program as an entrepreneur before joining and working for them. I started my second company, which was a filming company using drones to do videography and promotional videos. And what was interesting is within 1 month of coming out of their program, I actually had paying customers, but I didn't have a service or design package. So I actually went out, spoke to people, just shared my idea as much as I could, tried to get some feedback. And I had a few people who wanted to pay me to actually do some of their videos, but they were asking me like, how much does it cost? What do you cover? What do you include? And I didn't even have a package at the time. So I think that shift of mindset to really just go out, test things quickly and figure out what people want was super valuable for me. It actually helped me get to revenue much more quickly and validate my idea before actually overbuilding or spending too much money and resources on it. And that's basically what lean methodology is about. Great. Otherwise, everyone else, stay safe, stay healthy, and continue physical distancing, not social distancing. So keep in touch, reach out to your friends. All right, I think I will end the session. Again, if you want the slides or you want a recording, just shoot me an email. It's chin@classynovel.com. All right, see you all. Have a good night.